Hi, and welcome to LNA Does Audio Stuff. Hey, I'm on a little holiday this week, so I asked my friend Diana, who also has a music production tutorial channel, to cover for me this week. So she's gonna do this tutorial and she's awesome, so go and check out her YouTube channel out and take it away, Diana. Have fun, and I'm gonna see you next week. Bye.
Hello and welcome to Diana Does Audio Stuff. Thank you so much, Lena, for asking me to cover for you. I've been watching LNA's channel since like the early days. I've always been a big fan, so I'm so excited to be here. I hope that you'll enjoy today's video. I've decided to do it on how to take your song from an initial idea to a fully produced track. If you're anything like me, ideas just seem to come quite easily and then they go to die in my project graveyard.
I say follow through! Who's with me? Follow through!
So to prevent that from happening, so you actually have songs that you can put out and that you're happy with, I hope that these 10 tips will help. You don't need to take them as Bible, so they're just kind of guidelines or prompts that to think about when you're writing a song, but everyone's different and everyone's workflow is different, and these are not ones that you need to absolutely stick with, but I hope that they help. And this is kind of how I approach songwriting and production and arrangement. I'm gonna dive straight in with tip number 1, so starting with a chord progression, melody idea, a lyrical concept, whatever it is. It might be browsing a sample library and finding a sample that you like, maybe chopping it up. So you want to kind of come up with the initial idea that you're going to develop, and I feel like a lot of us don't have a problem with this step. For me, for this song, I came up with 4 chords that I really liked the sound of. They seemed to flow very naturally for me as a pianist because my hands pretty much don't move during these. Pretty simple, but also I really like the chord harmonies in this, and I feel like it's just quite a nice kind of flowing sequence. You might already have a concept in mind, so that can be easier to brainstorm ideas around. For me, a lot of the times I will just play around with different sounds until I like the idea and I will keep developing it. So step number 2 is to improvise and play around with different ideas. If you're a songwriter or a vocalist, you might want to start singing over it to get an initial melody. That is what I started doing, so I was just playing the chords on loop and just playing around with different melodies, and I came up with a hook that I really liked. So I would usually kind of hum along the melody and then certain words would pop into my head and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in this direction. You might want to try different drum patterns or something, or chop up a sample and flip it. Sort of play around until you can start to form different sections. Once I had the initial chorus or the hook, I started playing around with ideas for the verse, and I was like, okay, I have a verse here, a pre-chorus. This is starting to form itself into an actual idea that I can keep developing.
I'm not dead, not really. Feel numb in my fingertips lately. Belly full, skull empty. Dizzy from the hunger I'm craving. If it's all in my head, what do I do with the space? Cut it open again and fill it with better days and whisper. Take a little time to escape till you barely recognize your own name. With my head down low, eyes closed, white knuckles gripping 3-leaf clovers. Has insanity ever felt so tame?
Sometimes it's also easier to take a step back and maybe make things a bit simpler. So instead of trying to come up with very complex chord ideas, even playing around with 2 chords or something like that can give you some initial ideas, and then you've started off simple, so you can take it further and make it as grandiose as you want, or just stick with those 2 chords, play them in different patterns or something like that. Just keep playing around with your idea until you get like a vision or a feel of the song. You kind of know where you want this to go. So number 3 is find a vision for the song, like I said, and keep making further choices to complement that. So whether that's exploring more of the song through lyrical concepts. So for example, in this song I added a bridge, and the bridge was in 3rd person unlike the rest of the song, and it kind of provided a slightly different perspective and kind of elaborated on the topic a little bit more.
Mouth open wide as you sink your teeth and bat your flesh eater's eyes. Mouth open wide. Mouth open wide as I squelch my words to shrink myself in your eyes. Running when I got no place. place to hide.
At this stage, you want to kind of find the vision for the song, but also don't be afraid to experiment and be open-minded to your ideas. I knew that the first thing I wanted to do was track down like a guide vocal, because I knew exactly what kind of vocal processing I wanted as my voice descends down the scale for escape, tame,
so tame.
and those kind of phrases. I really wanted this overdriven vocoded vocal just kind of layered over it. So I was like, I know that this is what I want. And I stuck with that, and that worked in my opinion. But at the same time, I started playing around with different bass lines. I started forming this kind of very bouncy bass line, which I was like, this is a bit weird. It doesn't really work with the concept of the song so well, because the mood is like quite somber and a little bit depressing, let's be honest. But actually I came up with that bass line, and then I came up with the beat to complement that, and I realized that the kind of like more bounciness to it actually lifts the song. It makes it more fun to listen to.
Take a little time to escape till you barely recognize your own name. With my head down low, eyes closed, white knuckles gripping three-leaf clovers. Has insanity ever felt so tame?
So it's kind of depressing, kind of also makes you want to wind your waist. Don't be afraid to also pick contrasting ideas, and just keep an open mind. Just keep throwing ideas at it and just see what comes out. Don't feel like you have to stick with a certain genre, and just see where it takes you. For example, for the bridge of this song, I actually was writing another song at the same time. The chorus of that song I thought would work really well for the bridge, so I added that in. Kind of merged the two songs together, and that really worked very well. Now we have the kind of key elements. I have a basic drum beat, a bass line, I have the vocal line, the lyrics. So how can we then switch up these sections? Because you want to keep the listener entertained.
Are you not entertained?
To maybe surprise them as well, or add something different to it. So harmony, different chord changes is a great way to do that. So for me in this song, I added a bridge section and I changed the chords. So the pattern stayed the same, but I started it in A minor. So the actual song started at E minor. Even though I wrote the bridge vocal line over the initial 4 chords, it actually worked really well over A minor. So I switched that up. We went from to in the bridge. I also added a key change. So for me, when I was recording the guide vocal, felt like it needed like a bigger climactic moment.
Let you know we take it seriously. Then watch as we change the key.
So I added a key change into it, and I felt like I could get more volume and more dynamics out of my voice that way. And then I had this kind of falsetto-y descending scale going over it.
Says insanity ever felt so tame.
So little elements like that just really break up the song and add varying sections to it that keep it interesting. And also, as you're switching up the different sections, try to build the song. So maybe like every 4 to 8 bars, you want to add something different to it. So for me, in the pre-chorus, I wanted to add some synths, some sort of like nice soft synths or brighter synths into it.
Dizzy from the hunger I'm craving. If it's all in my head, what do I do with the space? Cut it open again and fill it with better days and whisper.
Switching up the beat, kind of changing up the bass line and things like that. You can also even add tempo changes, so that can really complement the emotion of the song. Little changes like that can really make a difference and make it exciting to listen to. Even if you do choose to keep it simple and maybe stay with the same 2 chords, think of different ways that you can add interest so that it doesn't just stay the same all the way through. Also, when you're building up, try to play around with the range that you have. So for example, in the verses, my vocal kind of stays in the same place. Whereas in the chorus, by contrast, it goes to. and that's like that whole melody line spans a whole octave, so there's a definite contrast between the verse and the chorus. But at the same time, in the chorus, there's also like a little rhythmic spoken word section, which breaks up the chorus even more. So those kinds of changes in your arrangement will really kind of help to keep it interesting. So the next point is adding ear candy. How can you switch up the different sections even if they remain the same? So for me, the chord progression is the same in the verse and the chorus. One of the first things I added was the bells in the chorus, which are just from Output Arcade.
We're better days and whisper. Take a little time to escape till you barely recognize your own name. With my head down low, eyes closed, white knuckles gripping 3-leaf clovers. Has insanity ever felt so tight?
I really like using it for little kind of ear candy or different sounds, different samples that I want to add, because I really like the fact that you can set them to the tune of the song. They're really easy to manipulate in the software itself. So that's one of the things I added. I also added this kind of rattle sound, which I just made by tapping a guiro. So in the section before the second chorus, where I say I'll never win this race, I kind of have the bells coming in, I have these kind of breaths going from side to side, and I have the rattle to kind of build a bit more tension to it and make it feel like I'm running out of time. Like the bells kind of work as an alarm, and the tapping also works as like this kind of TikTok kind of sound.
Got me open again, I'll never win this race. Take a little time to escape.
So little elements like that can really help to build it up. I also have the vocoded, distorted layers that I have in the chorus that also add a bit more ear candy to it. I have different synths coming in and out.
Mouth open wide as you sink your teeth into your flesh eater's eyes. Mouth open wide. Mouth open wide as I squelch my words and trick myself in your eyes. Running when I got no place to hide.
So don't be afraid to get creative and add different sounds to it. You can always remove them. I also, for example, used Vital Synth to create my own sounds, and I didn't use all the ones that I created in the process. Yeah, your sound design can really make a difference in the way that you switch up different sections. So initially I had these electro piano chords going all the way through the song, and I realized that they kind of just feel a bit exhausting. You want to hear a bit more of a different change to them. So for example, I added a bit of distortion to them, and then I introduced the reverse of that sample and put them through a rotor cabinet emulator to kind of add more movement to it. And then I also just took them out completely in the bridge and replaced it with the Celeste sounds. This kind of ties me into tip number 6, which is clean up your arrangements. Once you've thrown all your ideas at it, just because you can add certain harmonies or melodies or different chords doesn't mean that you have to, doesn't mean that it works for the song.
What is my purpose?
So it's something that I've always struggled with, is because I can add another harmony, build it up or whatever. Sometimes scaling it down is much more effective. So for example, where the key change happens, I've just taken out the beat completely.
Take a little time to escape till you barely recognize your own name.
It creates more impact for that section, and silence can sometimes be a friend. So don't be afraid to keep things simple. In the intro, for example, instead of building some sort of arrangement, it is just literally an a cappella of my vocal, but I processed it in a way that was somewhat inspired by Kanye West's Monster, that I think is really effective for the song. It kind of ties you in. I think the hook is really catchy, but you also kind of don't really know what's coming because it's just a vocal on its own. And I think when the actual song comes in, it creates more impact.
Take a little time to escape till you barely recognize your own name. With my head down low, eyes closed,
Cleaning up your arrangement, taking out certain sections that don't work, switching them up a little bit. So for example, like I said, I had these static chords going on all the way in the background. They didn't work. I didn't need them all the way through, so I took them out. Or in the intro section also, I tried to add some harmonies to it, and they also didn't work. Don't be afraid to also throw as many ideas as you can on the arrangement, but also be critical and objective when you're deciding what stays and what goes, and ultimately just think of what complements the song. Just because something is complex doesn't mean that it's good, and just because you've kept things simple doesn't mean that it isn't effective. Most of the song, these are just 4 chords and they follow that sequence. There isn't loads of counter melody to it, but I think it works because I have kept it relatively simple. Repetition is also very useful. When you are looking at your arrangement, don't be afraid to keep repeating certain sections. Like the chorus repeats about 6 times in this, and that's absolutely fine because it reinforces the song. It makes it more catchy. So it doesn't have to be every section completely different, every section overloaded with different harmonies and melodies. Obviously switch it up and keep it interesting, but also don't be afraid to add more repetition. Even like with your lyrics, both of the verses start with the phrase "I'm not dead," and the pre-chorus is almost the same in each sections, but I feel like it's effective. I've switched it up by singing it slightly differently.
And I'm not dead, not quite yet, saving all of the best of me for you. Don't look behind, don't make me turn around and reveal all the overflowing decay. If it's all in my head, what do I do with the space?
Also, in terms of ear candy, I have this reverse vocal in the bridge that I really liked. It's just a reverse vocal of what I'm singing over the bridge, but when I reversed it, I kind of picked out certain phrases that kind of sounded like "I want more," or "get out my house," or "get out my head," or whatever. And then I brought that reverse vocal back into the key change.
Head down low, eyes closed, white knuckles gripping 3-leaf clover. Says insanity ever felt so dead.
So again, just reinforcing that idea. Repetition can bring about familiarity into the song and make it more memorable, or make certain elements more memorable. So don't feel like you have to just bring them in once and then never again. It can actually be a very effective tool to make your song more catchy. Now, number 7 is paying attention to your performance, your dynamics, your enunciation, and rhythm as well. This depends on whether you want to record everything straight away or whether you do it later on. So for me, with like vocals especially, I like to wait until I'm familiar with the song. I've experimented with different types of phrasing, boom, with different enunciation, and I'm solid in what I want to do. And that is also applicable if you're playing piano or guitar, for example. So things like dynamics in your performance, the way that you enunciate certain words, will really make a difference to conveying the emotion. So I've switched up my phrasing and vocalizing in the pre-chorus before the second chorus. That kind of helps to build a song. You will also notice that verses are a lot more kind of spoken word and whispery compared to the chorus. I don't have the most dynamic voice or the loudest voice, but there's still a clear difference. And then, for example, in the key change, again, there's more volume in my voice, there's more power to it, and that's why I wanted to add the key change, because I felt like I could add this big climactic moment into the song. It also comes down in the way that you enunciate certain words. So, for example, yet and you are not words that necessarily rhyme, but by going yet and yeah, I've kind of made them rhyme in the second verse.
Not quite yet, saving all of the best of me for you.
Little elements like that can be really powerful in making your song more cohesive and also conveying your emotion to the listener. So definitely think about that when you're ready to record. Also pay attention to the way that certain elements sit together rhythmically. I wrote the bass line before I started adding the drum elements. I chose this specific rhythm to complement the bass line. If you're programming everything, switch up the velocity, change up the timing a little bit so it has more swing and more groove into it. So pay attention to rhythm, dynamics, and performance. Now that you've got your elements, you've got your arrangement, you've recorded a performance that you're happy with. Mixing. Elena has just done a mixing course, so I won't go into mixing in this video because way beyond the scope of that. She's got some amazing tips. I've kind of been roughly mixing this song as I've gone along, so applying certain effects, certain elements, applying things like distortion or reverb, and then I was just refining them at mixing stage. A lot of the times when I'm starting to mix, I will find the key elements of the song. In my case, I think it was vocals, the bass line, and the bell. bells, which are my 3 favorite elements. So making those sit well and then bringing in the rest of the elements will make sure you're focusing on the kind of main characters in your mix and give them the most amount of spotlight that they need, and then everything else will work around it. I was making sure that certain elements didn't clash, that things were audible and present, and weren't overpowering. So when I was kind of first laying down the arrangement, there was a lot of synths that had a lot of kind of low end and mid frequencies that were really clashing and made the mix very muddy. So it was about using EQ, using a bit of distortion, putting them together almost like puzzle pieces so that they occupy their own space but don't clash with each other. Automation is great as well, so you might not want to leave all of your effects processing the same all the way through the song. I automated some of the reverbs and delays that really kind of brought more movement and dynamics into the mix and emphasized certain elements when it kind of was their time to shine, and not all the way through. Think about bringing in different dynamics, think about how you want things to sit, listen to other songs that you like or that are similar to yours, because they can provide really good reference on where you want things to sit in the mix. So number 9 is to take regular breaks. I cannot tell you how important that is. Your flow state is really good for maybe a couple of hours. After that, when you're starting to neglect things like eating, drinking, going outside, sleeping, it's not good for you. Get out of your head, go for a walk. It's really going to shift your perspective and get you more to like an objective mindset, because sometimes you can get this like tunnel vision where you feel like you're tweaking things and they don't work and nothing works,
Feeling like a saggy, massive sack of shit.
and you might feel like you want to give up. Whereas if you come back to the track, you will also be able to know exactly what it is you want to fix, and you might realize that the things that you thought sounded bad are actually not that bad. And also, your ears just need rest. If you're focusing on mixing for hours upon hours, you really can lose perspective very easily and actually make your job harder, because your ears are just not as perceptive to the changes you're making. So take a step back, take a break. Also try to remain objective. I know it's very hard when it's your own work. Instead of just thinking that everything is bad and you don't like something, think about why you don't like it. Is there something that's clashing with it? Does the melody not work? Is it the way that you're performing certain sections? Because then if you work back from it, you can actually fix it. Tip number 10 is ask somebody else to listen to your track. Other people can be a really great sounding board. I would suggest going with somebody who has your best interests at heart, but also someone who can provide constructive criticism. So somebody who knows about music or music production, or knows the kind of goals that you're trying to achieve with the track or the style that you want to go in. But also play it for your friends and family that might just want to enjoy it, and see how they respond to it.
God, son, that's wonderful.
And it might then give you more ideas on how you want to tweak it. So at this point, I probably will be redoing some of my vocal performance and probably working a bit more on the mix and maybe adding some more elements in it. So if you do want to hear it, what it sounds like when I actually release it, you can follow me on Instagram or YouTube and you will be notified of that. And then of course, you would want to master it before it hits the streaming services. Yeah, I hope this video helps you finish more tracks. Let me know what you think of the tips below. If you have any tips of your own that help you, drop them down below. And thank you so much for having me on this channel. I really enjoyed this video. If you want to check out my channel, the link's down below for you, and I will see you soon. Thank you so much for watching.